Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CJCA Positive Youth Development Committee Education Webinar Series. This is what I believe is our 7th in a series of webinars this year focused on education in the juvenile justice system. Today's webinar focuses on effective post-secondary strategies. I want to thank you all for taking the time to participate in the webinar series, and a special thanks to Peter Forbes, Commissioner of Massachusetts DYS, Phil Harris from Temple University, and Simone Gonsolin from the American Institute of Research, who have all put a great deal of work into the preparation of these webinars, as well as our presenters for today, who Peter will introduce shortly. For those of you who might be new to CJCA, we are a national nonprofit organization formed in 1994 to improve juvenile justice systems, local secure correctional and residential facilities, services, programs, and most importantly, the long-term outcomes for youth and their families. CJCA represents the youth juvenile justice system CEOs in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and various major metropolitan counties across the country. With that, I'll turn it over to Jonah, who is in the CJCA Braintree office, and he'll cover a few housekeeping items, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Mike. Just a couple of short items before we get started here. All attendees will be muted today. However, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. To ask a question, you can type it in at any time to the GoToWebinar control panel, and questions will be answered during that Q&A session at the end of the webinar. This webinar is also being recorded. A link to the audio recording and the PowerPoint presentation you'll see here today will also be sent out following the close of the webinar to all attendees. With that, I'll turn it over to Peter Forbes for some introductions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Peter Forbes. Mike acknowledged Simone and Phil as part of the planning committee. I also want to recognize Michelle Phillips from my team at DYS and Mass, and Mike Dempsey and the team, including Darlene and Jonah at CJCA, for their support of this ongoing webinar series on education in the juvenile justice context. Today, we're very fortunate to have the team from Massachusetts in. The bios for our distinguished guests are actually linked in so that everybody that's on the webinar can access that. In the interest of time, I don't want to read everybody's bio. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction. Dr. J.D. Lorac is the president and CEO of the Commonwealth Corporation from Massachusetts, a public-private corporation focused on workforce, youth, and economic development. Wendy Taylor is the coordinator of student services and post-secondary programming of the DYS Educational Initiative in Massachusetts on behalf of the Collaborative for Educational Services. And Woody Cliff is the director of the DYS Educational Initiative on the behalf of the Collaborative. They're a great group. We're very fortunate to be working with them. And one of the reasons that we're doing this session on post-secondary strategies is that the national practitioners are struggling in juvenile justice, are struggling with what do we do with that young person who's achieved their high school diploma and or their GED equivalent, and particularly for kids that are still in programs. What's our strategy? And in Massachusetts, Wendy Taylor really has been our kind of lead innovator on that piece of work. So we're very fortunate to have the team that we have on the call today. And I'm going to go right to Dr. J.D. Lorac.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Forbes, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate this opportunity to talk about the partnership that we have in Massachusetts to help advance post-secondary opportunities for our state's young people in the juvenile justice system. Let me begin by giving an outline of our presentation today. First, we'll cover some overview of national trends in higher education, the macro level picture. From there, my colleagues and I will talk about effective post-secondary practices for designing a post-secondary program, the design principles, if you will. From there, we'll move on to a specific case example of Massachusetts and our work within the Commonwealth. And then finally, we'll move on to a Q&A section. So that's an overview of our presentation today. Let me proceed by talking a little bit about the big picture and the context of national trends in higher education in the U.S. I'm sure all of you have read in the newspapers this discourse around technology and automation and how it's leading to fundamental changes, not only in the economy, but in the shape of work for the future. And so, separate and apart from the juvenile justice system, the question that many in higher education are asking is, can colleges keep up with these changes? And what does it all mean for post-secondary opportunities that are provided to all young people in any setting? At the same time, we also see, because of the cost problem in higher education, more questioning of the value proposition of higher education. Consumers and parents and families are asking, does the cost of a degree really pay off in terms of higher wages and a better career? We also see on the employer side that oftentimes employers key their positions to credentials that may be over and above the skills that are actually required for the job, leading to credential inflation in the marketplace. Both of these factors lead to a situation where people are looking for a better value proposition from higher ed. And we believe at Commonwealth Corporation that this means that post-secondary opportunities that are focused on developing real employability skills are where we need to be. And we believe that for learners in general, and we believe that for learners in the juvenile justice system in particular. We've also seen at the same time growth and improvement in digital and online delivery platforms, which are of obvious utility in the juvenile justice setting. Along with this are the development of competency-based learning platforms. That is, platforms that focus not so much on delivering facts and figures type of content, but rather competency-based content that leads to real specific skills that are really transferable to a specific job. We also know that when learners use online delivery platforms, that they often need coaching and support. This is true for all learners, no matter what their setting is. So in thinking about our population of interest, we're increasingly interested in the utility of digital platforms, but we know that that has to be coupled with robust student support mechanisms. And indeed, in Massachusetts, under Governor Baker's leadership, Commonwealth Corporation is helping to lead a broad-based conversation around all of these issues. Recently, he asked us to take the lead on the Governor's Commission on Digital Innovation and Lifelong Learning, an effort focused on expanding post-secondary opportunities to learners who are often left out of those opportunities in the higher education system as we know it today. And a big focus of that effort is on creating a much tighter coupling between post-secondary opportunities and real workforce development opportunities. Let me now turn to some effective practices for designing a post-secondary program and some of the things that we've learned at a high level from our work. And I'll go through a few of these points. Number one, it's vitally important, as I said, to integrate post-secondary education with workforce development. Our approach in Massachusetts is to make ongoing connections between those two spheres, and we do that through the partnership that we'll talk about today, CEP, or the Comprehensive Education Partnership, which consists of the Massachusetts Department of Youth Services, Commonwealth Corporation, which is the agency I lead, which focuses on workforce development, and the Collaborative for Educational Services. We seek to leverage our organizational strengths in combination so that we can develop the best possible services to DYS youth. And we take a long-term view that includes post-secondary education and career planning as a strategy for integrating juvenile justice youth into communities, providing positive experiences of success, planning for future living wage careers, and preventing further engagement with the criminal justice system. Now, because post-secondary education doesn't always provide an immediate payoff in terms of higher wages, it needs to happen in tandem with employment that can support youth financially through college. Next, let me turn to point 2, the importance of building strategic partnerships. In Massachusetts, we've sought to build partnership by targeting colleges that have the incentive, interest, and capacity to support our youth. Our first relationship in this sphere was fortified by the Department of Youth Services with Bunker Hill Community College, one of the leading community colleges in our state, and more recently through the Massachusetts Early College Program, which fostered relationships with Holyoke Community College in the western part of our state, Quincy College just south of Boston, and Urban College of Boston, which is an amazing private institution in Boston that serves largely an English language learner clientele. These relationships are solidified with formal memoranda of understanding. Also in the realm of strategic partnerships, community-based organizations who serve juvenile justice-involved youth are uniquely positioned to support post-secondary institutions' mission to increase retention and completion of students because of those organizations' understanding of this population of youth, the supports that they need for successful post-secondary transition, and practices that can promote post-secondary success. Indeed, community-based organizations are often the linchpin for providing the expanded student supports and resources that are so important and that I mentioned earlier. Number 3, in terms of effective practices, aligning resources and services. Some practitioners have identified a lack of resource alignment on the state and local level as a major barrier to providing effective service to a justice-involved population. So, promoting alignment of these resources and a stronger relationship between funding and outcome can result in more effective programs. Part of this involves alignment of Pell Grant resources for this population, which, as you know, may know as a policy matter, has changed back and forth over the years, sometimes benefiting the population that we hope to serve, sometimes not. But what is critical for all learners, and in particular for justice-involved youth, is to promote post-secondary opportunities in a way that avoids putting youth into unmanageable debt. Point 4, supporting college and career planning early and systematically. One of the things we do in Massachusetts through our comprehensive partnership is deliver the Empower Your Future curriculum. This is a curriculum that was developed by Commonwealth Corporation for use with our Department of Youth Services as a plan for and a tool for all youth to help plan their academic and career goals. This kind of formal curriculum is so important because justice-involved youth are often disconnected from education, and they often lack critical knowledge of their rights in the workplace and the consequences of having a record to their long-term education and career plans. Indeed, even youth who hold secondary credentials may require significant academic and college readiness instruction and support. And so this type of formal curriculum to support college and career planning early and systematically is very, very important. These services, we believe, should involve training youth on how to communicate about their juvenile record with academic institutions and employers, as well as providing youth with information about career pathways and assisting them in making progress toward careers that aren't affected by having an offense record. And there are lots of careers that are more conducive to opportunities for this population. As part of this support, we believe that youth should also be provided with legal aid to check their criminal records for accuracy and to expunge and seal records in order to remove barriers to employment and career planning. Next point, recruit and prepare the right mix of staff to support post-secondary participation and success. Providers need to have this right mix and to provide training opportunities to support staff in developing critical knowledge and skills. These skills should include knowledge of the criminal justice system and legal aid resources, an understanding of how court involvement can impact individuals' ability to enter certain careers, familiarity with the labor market data and career pathways, ability to provide effective case management, and capacity to deliver and develop academic and college readiness curriculum. In Massachusetts, we have a cadre of education and career counselors, including Wendy Taylor, who focuses exclusively on post-secondary support. This next point is critical. Facilitate an identity shift. All across the board, staff, but most of all the students themselves, need to see justice-involved youth themselves as college-going. Thus, it's important that programming be rooted in positive youth development approaches that focus on facilitating that identity shift from negative to positive self-concepts. referring to justice-involved youth as students, scholars, mentors, and leaders. This can lead to development of internal assets and an increased sense of community engagement. This identity shift helps learners, young people, expand their worldview and their sense of mastery, possibility, and accomplishment that's critical to enabling them to stay engaged in their education and career pathway and persevere through setbacks. Likewise, it's important to listen to youth about their interests and plans for post-secondary course offerings. Justice-involved youth may not always have the ability to take any course they choose while still in residential settings. Thus, providers should learn from the youth what classes interest them and try as hard as they can to match those interests in order to support engagement and completion. At the same time, attention also needs to be paid to helping youth develop an understanding of how any courses may transfer or fulfill general requirements toward the type of credential they'll need in order to get the job that they want. Next to last, plan for unintended breaks in course progression. As we all know, justice-involved youth experience many transitions in their lives. Therefore, providers need to be prepared to support youth to continue their coursework through those transitions by anticipating that breaks may occur and having a plan in advance. And I'll add here that this is where competency-based approaches and online approaches can be very helpful. These approaches are often designed for general learners who also experience breaks and transitions in their lives. Therefore, it's the type of platform that can be of particular utility to our population. And then finally, think about confidentiality from the outset. Issues of compliance with FERPA, the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and protecting confidentiality around DYS involvement are central to the success of any post-secondary program. And these should be addressed during the initial outreach and relationship building stage. And they require high-level decision makers, such as at institutions, the VP of Academic Affairs, the Director of Online Programming at a college, to agree to alternative methods for admission, enrollment, and participation in course requirements that arise. It's a complex landscape, but it's one worth pursuing, and those are some of the design principles that we focus on in Massachusetts as we seek to initiate and expand programs within our Commonwealth. With that, let me turn it over to my colleagues who will go into a case example from the Massachusetts College Program.
Thank you, Dr. Lorac, and thank you, CJCA, for this opportunity to discuss the Massachusetts DYS College Program and our lessons learned to date. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the program, we thought it would be helpful to highlight factors at the national and state level that have been instrumental to our efforts to expand college access, participation, persistence, and completion for youth involved in our JJ system. First, but because each state's JJ system is organized differently, I wanted to note that in Massachusetts, we have a design that strives to keep youth close to their home communities, their families, and schools. As such, DYS has 48 schools co-located in residential facilities where generally up to 15 youth, some still in high school, some who have already earned their diploma or its equivalent, live and attend classes. This approach requires that efforts such as our college program, which we'll discuss later, must be designed to encompass opportunities across the state, meet the wide scope of academic needs of all learners, and in such a way as to leverage the resources specific to where our programs are located, while also maximizing the benefits of a small residential learning community. On the national front, some factors that are at play as the Raise the Age legislation gained traction across the nation, we observed greater attention to addressing barriers to college access for disadvantaged low-income youth, and importantly, quite explicitly, youth involved in the juvenile justice system. Relative to the focus of this webinar was a Dear Colleague letter that has been shared with all participants that sought to address issues of eligibility for Pell Grants for otherwise eligible students who are confined to JJ facilities. The good news here is JJ youth are eligible. Additionally, here in Massachusetts, the state launched the Early College Initiative, which along with 4 other design principles set forth equitable access as its first and foremost design principle. This policy and shift had the effect of motivating institutes of higher education to be more responsive to partnering with us, DYS, if they weren't already. We've also seen increased recognition by state departments of education and LEAs that college preparation begins well before a student's senior year, thus resulting in more and more states creating formalized college and career planning as early as middle school, but mostly it begins in high school. As a consequence, more young people who are placed in JJ settings across the nation will have done some concrete planning for college and career, which we believe serves as fertile ground and critical background knowledge for practitioners to build upon at the point of a young person's entry into our settings. Last, as Dr. Lorac stated earlier, institutes of higher education are creating greater online access to credit-bearing college classes, anytime, anywhere learning, and I think it's worth noting that federal E-rate funding has been leveraged or can be leveraged to increase speeds to schools and JJ settings across the nation, making participation in these classes possible, as well as reducing frustration with slow speeds by students. Specific to Massachusetts, we're going to go to the next slide. We're trying to control it, but maybe having a, oh, there you go. All right, specific to Massachusetts, there's some really key ingredients that we believe have contributed to the establishment of our emerging college program. First and foremost, because of a long-standing commitment in the state of Massachusetts to positive youth development throughout the entire Massachusetts DYS service design, we listen carefully to our youth, we pay attention to the population changes, and are committed to creating opportunities for them that both develop their sense of identity and agency, as well as personalizing their education. Beginning in 2013-14, following Raise the Age legislation, which I think we've seen throughout the nation, and with an increasingly older population, more youth are arriving with or earning their high school diploma or its equivalent while in our care. This has caused quite an urgency among all stakeholders to designing educational programming to better meet the academic, social, and career development needs of this population, and to do so side by side with our traditional high school students. Basically, the question we're asking and that Commissioner Forbes put forward at the beginning is, what do we do with these youth who have already earned their diplomas or its equivalent? And improve programming for all. So in addition to designing programming to fit the needs of this older population, here in Massachusetts, Department of Youth Services Commissioner Forbes, together with stakeholders across the state, have made access to technology and online learning opportunities central to achieving the mission of the department. During the school day, this means that we have accepted the use of the internet as a risk that we manage because of its potential benefits. We've also adopted Google Apps for Education as a teaching and learning platform across the state. Together, this high level of support from the commissioner down, coupled with the right hardware and software solutions and training, have made it possible for our youth to take more online courses while in our residential programs. Third, we had established relationships with community colleges, 2 of them in fact, and because of these historical partnerships, the development of a robust college program was both easier to envision and design. And last, before I hand it over to Wendy Taylor, we could not have made it this far without the allocation of a full-time position to build out the college program. Our coordinator of student support services and post-secondary programming, Wendy Taylor, a former education and career counselor, has the know-how and expertise to lead this initiative forward together with all the stakeholders across Massachusetts. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over the controls to Wendy, who will provide us with a synopsis of the stages of growth we've been through and where we hope to go in the future. Wendy.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you, CJCA, Commissioner Forbes, and colleagues for this opportunity. I'm really excited to talk to you this afternoon about post-secondary programming in the state of Massachusetts. I'm going to share the journey of post-secondary education in DYS residential settings over the past 10 years. And Commissioner Forbes mentioned the nationwide challenge regarding what students who have a high school credential could do during the school day. We too discovered a need to identify opportunities to engage these youth, and the programming that I will describe to you today that we have developed and that we will continue to develop is intended to offer engaging, authentic options that will result in credits and credentials for our youth and that are aligned with their career interests. When I started working for the Collaborative for Educational Services 10 years ago as an education liaison, the 200 students on my caseload were not being promoted beyond grade 9 or earning a high school credential. When students talked about their long-term goals, they often talked about becoming professional athletes or professional musicians. If they mentioned college, they might say that they wanted to earn a master's degree and then work in construction. At that time, the post-secondary option available to the few students who had a high school credential and were interested in college was enrollment in a correspondence course through our one higher education partner at the time, Bunker Hill Community College. It was a fragmented system for a few youth with limited infrastructure and training to support it. As our educational programming became more robust and the number of youth with a high school credential increased, our post-secondary programming began to evolve. In line with the growth of digital and online delivery platforms referenced by Dr. Lorac, we began offering online college courses instead of correspondence courses. We developed a relationship with an additional higher education partner, Springfield Technical Community College, to support the students in the western region of the state. We codified agreements regarding roles, responsibilities, program offerings, processes, and protocols in a guide. The DYS Post-Secondary Education Resource Guide is intended for the caring adults who support the students as they prepare for and enroll in post-secondary education and plan to transition to the community. The guide also outlines how to support youth in successfully completing post-secondary courses once they are enrolled. In 2016, we published the guide and provided training to all stakeholders across the continuum of care. The training included all educators, program directors, clinical directors, and DYS community stakeholders and leadership. The increase in the number of youth enrolling in post-secondary education and in the number of caring adults having the tools to support those youth resulted in what Dr. Lorac referred to as an identity shift of students and program culture, and the youth began to believe in themselves as college-going students. Our data reflects the increase in youth with high school credentials believing in themselves as college-going students. In 2016, 16 youth in residential care enrolled in online college courses. 50% successfully completed their courses. In 2017, 20 youth in residential programs enrolled in online college courses. That was a 25% increase over 2016, and 65% of those youth successfully completed their courses. Last year, we had a 115% increase in youth enrolling in online college courses. As we roll out our college program, continue to strengthen our post-secondary infrastructure, and continue to provide professional development and training, we anticipate an increase in successful completion rates and retention. Since the 2016 post-secondary initiative rollout, and as the number of youth having a high school credential upon commitment or earning a high school credential while in a residential program increased, we recognize the need for a range of post-secondary options. We continue to provide classes for non-matriculating students. Most of our students had not applied and been accepted to a degree program as matriculating students. So the online programming that I've referenced so far has been for students who are not matriculating toward a degree program. Last semester, we piloted having an adjunct faculty member from Urban College of Boston teach a course in one of our facilities. The response from students, program staff, and the faculty member was overwhelmingly positive. All students earned an A in the course, and we're really excited about offering additional opportunities and expanding this opportunity across the state in the coming year. Students are able to prepare for and take the CLEP exam on site. CLEP is the college level examination program. An individual who receives a score around the 50 to 53 range, depends, each school has a different cut score, is eligible to receive a college credits for the content area. We offer CLEP preparation via 2 platforms. We partner with CEEAS, the Center for Educational Excellence in Alternative Settings, to provide cohorts of students live virtual CLEP preparation instruction. We also have 4 CLEP test centers. We use Modern States as an anywhere, anytime online learning support. Modern States provides free, pre-recorded CLEP prep courses. They can be accessed at any time. The CLEP preparation, or the CLEP exam, is a competency-based opportunity for our youth. The teaching coordinators in our program are trained acuplacer proctors and offer acuplacer testing on site. Acuplacer is the assessment that community colleges in Massachusetts and across the country use to determine course placement. Additionally, in the past 2 years, we have been able to offer limited dual enrollment opportunities. Earlier, Woody and Dr. Lorac mentioned the Early College Initiative. In March 2017, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts launched the Early College Initiative and provided an opportunity for institutes of higher education to partner with school districts to provide authentic college experiences to a demographic of youth who are underrepresented in higher education. We responded to this policy shift and commitment to equitable education and developed our college program. Dr. Lorac talked about the importance of strategic partnerships and the importance of confidentiality. He lets you know that we have strategic partnerships with Bunker Hill Community College, Holyoke Community College, Quincy College, and Urban College of Boston. We have signed MOUs with all 4 of those colleges, and they are committed to supporting our youth while they are in residential care, whether they're dual enrolled or matriculating toward a degree, and upon transition to the community and while they are in the community. We included in the MOUs the importance, the agreement, the commitment that our students' DYS involvement not be disclosed. We have identified key stakeholders who are in leadership positions at each school who are aware of our students' DYS involvement and are committed to keeping it confidential from faculty members, college advisors, and so forth. We are in compliance with FERPA, and that our students do sign the college's FERPA. In addition, DYS legal counsel developed a DYS FERPA waiver form that we also have students sign, giving us permission to communicate with the colleges. Our college program offers youth in residential care the opportunity to dual enroll up to 12 and earn up to 12 college credits before receiving a high school diploma. So this is a new opportunity for our students that will begin this year, and the students will be applying and accepted to the dual enrollment program at the colleges. and receiving high school credit and college credit for the same classes. I mentioned before that most of our students who were taking college classes were not matriculated students. With our college program, students in residential care who have a high school credential are now completing college applications and enrolling as matriculated students toward a degree program that is aligned with the career interests that they've identified during their Empower Your Future coursework. In the creation of our college program, we built upon and aligned our current resources, both in the DYS and with our partners, to focus on the following key components in the coming year. We've created outreach materials for youth and their families. Upon commitment to DYS, each youth will receive an outreach brochure and frequently asked questions. This is an opportunity for us to message to youth that we believe that they are college-going students. Families will receive the materials at staffings in programs and family engagement events. Also, we will facilitate 2 outreach events each year, one in October and one in April, statewide. Woody talked about the importance of earlier and more formalized planning for college and career. Dr. Lorac talked about the college readiness education programming that will be offered to students in residential care. We are in the process of developing that curriculum, and all youth will participate in the college readiness preparation, regardless of their grade or concentration, whether they're preparing for their high school equivalency, enrolled in high school, or ready to be enrolled in post-secondary education. We're also focusing on AccuPlacer preparation materials to help increase the AccuPlacer results and to increase the number of youth placing into college level courses. In the previous slide, I mentioned dual enrollment and matriculation in a college degree program. Our youth will now receive virtual or in-person advising from a college advisor to select courses and degree programs aligned with their career interests and with labor market trends. Our education and career counselors will collaborate with students, college advisors, DYS caseworkers, and high school guidance counselors to plan a seamless transition to the community. Another key component of our college program includes support to students and parents in completing the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA. As we did with the post-secondary initiative in 2016, this year we are providing training and professional development on the college program to stakeholders across the continuum of care. Finally, we have begun to develop a college program website. Information about the college program will be public so that students and family may access them. Additionally, the contents of the post-secondary education resource guide will be housed in the website to provide easier access and updated information and access to the stakeholders across the continuum of care. Our experiences offering online programming to youth in residential care have led us to develop processes and protocols regarding responsible student internet use and program oversight, most of which are outlined in the post-secondary education resource guide. These include a computer use policy that the students sign. We ask that computers be facing outwards in the classroom. Whenever a student is using their college email to communicate with their faculty members or advisors, we ask for one-to-one supervision. Lorac has been installed in the teacher computers, and they use that to monitor as a classroom monitoring software tool. Our strong relationships with our higher education partners allow support on alternatives to course assignments and exam taking. Additionally, our higher ed partners are including messaging around what an online student may or may not be able to do or access in their professional development for their faculty. We have an amazingly strong IT support at CES, the Collaborative for Educational Services. Every website is vetted before it is put on the allow list for student computers and laptops. Through filtering, we've increased the granularity in terms of how we can allow and block parts of one website. We're always trying to think outside the box. The IT team designed an alias student email system that has opened up a whole new world of opportunities, including Modern States and the AccuPlacer Practice app offered by College Board. The alias email system provides a verified email address unique to each student that is filtered through the program's teaching coordinator's email and does not identify the teacher or the student. So how is post-secondary education funded for the students in residential care in Massachusetts? As we've grown, we're getting smarter about our funding, and we have developed a pooled funding approach that includes federal funding, state funding, scholarships, grants, and in some cases out of pocket from the students and their families. Depending on the needs and eligibility of the youth, funding is pooled together to support this model. A young person may use one of these funding sources or a combination of several to fund post-secondary education. The Pell Grant is an important resource and it's complicated. We've just begun the process to have the Pell Grant applied to funding college courses for students in residential care. We've been working with it for several years with students in the community. This part is new for us. We have provided an in-depth training for education career counselors to support youth in completing the student section of the FAFSA, providing verification documentation to colleges, and accepting the Pell Grant so that funds may be applied to pay for courses and books. We are developing partnerships with the local federally funded education opportunity centers to provide virtual and in-person support to parents in completing the parent section of the FAFSA and accessing and providing verification documentation. I pulled the information on this slide and the next slide from the Federal Student Aid website. I'm not going to go through each bullet, but I do want to share some information and highlight a few points. The Federal Pell Grant Award for the 2018-2019 school year is $6,095, which typically covers tuition, fees, and books for a full-time student for one academic year at a community college. Funds will be awarded based on need. So if a student is taking one course and is Pell eligible, funds will be awarded for that one course and books. Students in juvenile justice programs are eligible for the Pell Grant if they are Pell eligible based on their FAFSA. So they must meet the criteria to be Pell eligible to receive it in juvenile justice programs. Students in juvenile justice programs are not eligible for subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These are the requirements to stay eligible. We have just covered a lot of ground. We mentioned a couple of resources and links that we have shared with CJCA. They are the Dear Colleague Letters Woody reference, the DYS Post-Secondary Education Resource Guide, the link to the Massachusetts Early College Program, and the link to the Federal Student Aid website. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, JD, Woody, and Wendy. We certainly do appreciate your time today, pulling together this wonderful information. I really has given us a good overview of the DYS college programs there in Massachusetts. So once again, I'd like to thank you on behalf of CJCA and today's participants. We do have a couple of questions that I'd like to share with you. And the first one, JD, you might be the best person to respond to, but certainly, you know, Woody and Wendy, please jump in there as you think would be good. In one of your early slides, JD, you mentioned strategic partners are very important when designing a post-secondary program as a real effective practice. Can you tell us who might be some of these strategic partners, in addition to the community colleges, obviously, and how did you approach them to join this initiative, whether it be the community college you want to share with us or with other strategic partners? And then what were your challenges in getting those strategic partners to the table?
Thank you for the question. I'll speak to it conceptually and then ask my colleagues to fill in the practical details in our particular implementation. I think when it comes to strategic partnerships, it's important to think about the different legs of the stool in supporting success. So, for example, it's important to have a strategic partner who is the expert when it comes to the learning. And that is not only where the community college comes in, but any type of learning provider who has experience with disadvantaged youth or opportunity learners who may not have the type of acculturation toward a college education that other people in society do. Having a community partner who understands what it takes to successfully educate learners such as those is vitally important. And as I said, supplementing that with other types of community-based partners, different types of community-based organizations that again are familiar with this particular population of learners in their communities is important from the support standpoint, because without the support structure buttressing the educational component, we know that it won't be optimally successful. And then finally, the other type of partner in concept that it's very important to have is the partner who understands the link between the educational program being provided and the employment opportunities in the community or region. Because without that kind of close coupling between the educational program being offered and the resultant employment opportunities, again, we won't have the sort of through line of impact that we're seeking to have. So those three legs of the stool, learner expert, education expert, a community-based support service expert, and employability expert, in my mind, are conceptually what you want to have as you approach the juvenile justice type of population. What do you, Wendy, what would you add to this?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Lorac. So we have the strategic partners with the 4 partners that we mentioned in the college program. We also have a partnership with Springfield Technical Community College and several other schools around the state. The education and career counselors reached out to all of the colleges, both community colleges and some of the technical schools, to develop relationships for students. We have relationships. I reached out to all of the community colleges and explained what we were trying to do and got to the right person, usually academic, Dean of Academic Affairs. We have relationships with the school districts or LEAs across all of the state. Those relationships have been were solidified many years ago and are very strong. And we also have, as I mentioned before, we have started partnerships with the Education Opportunity Centers, which provide support to students and families around preparation for college applications, for AccuPlacer, FAFSA, which I talked about, and so forth. Some of the challenges, honestly, the challenges can be that people don't understand our population and are not always excited about working with us until we tell them a little bit about our outcomes. And typically we are able to then engage in a conversation that has both parties excited about what can be done to serve this population of students.
Great. Thanks for those responses. I think with your passion, you were probably pretty convincing and getting those strategic partners to the table. So thanks so much for sharing that. We have another question. This participant says, if I was interested in establishing a duly enrolled program of education, where do I start? Is it a data collection thing? What were your lessons learned? And who funds the lion's share of these programs, given your presentation on the pooled funding approach?
Sure. So that's a great question, and I'll start with how you determine whether you're going to begin a dual enrollment program or how you get there. And I do think that it begins with data collection. Our goal is to offer dual enrollment to grade 11 and 12 students, because we anticipate that most of our grade 9 and 10 students will not be college ready. So I think it's important to look at your population and identify what your numbers are with grades 11 and 12. In terms of choosing a partner, I would say, depending on whether you have one facility in your state or you have multiple facilities, I would try to identify a partner that is close in proximity if you're able to, and a partner who has experience with dual enrollment, and especially a partner who has experience with the population that we serve, even if they're not necessarily juvenile justice involved. How to pay for it. So I may not have answered that question thoroughly, but feel free to reach out to me if you want to connect and have a more thorough conversation. In the school districts, and again, it depends on how many school districts you're working with. If you're working with one school district, then the MOU with the school district and the community college may help with your MOU with the community college to develop that programming. Paying for it, we are fortunate. When I referenced state funding in that slide, the Department of Youth Services in Massachusetts has funding allocated for post-secondary education for the students. So there are some colleges that have what's called the early Pell Grant, and if a college has that grant, then the students who are dual enrolled are able to pay for their education if they're Pell eligible with the Pell Grant. Otherwise, in Massachusetts, the Department of Youth Services will pay for the courses and the books. Was there more to the question?
No, I think you responded quite well with some examples there. Thanks so much, Wendy. Did anybody else want to jump in there? And Peter, I'm sorry I didn't include you in the possibility of individuals who respond to questions. I mean, this is your agency, so certainly if you want to jump in there with Wendy, JD, and Woody, please go ahead.
Simone, on the funding issue, what we've really tried to do, and Wendy has been at the forefront of it, is exhaust funding streams to the extent possible based on what these young people are eligible for, based on their own individual circumstances. And then at the end of the equation, we've been able to step in, and we've dedicated a discrete amount of money that we're able to pay out to support that. And we've done some of the small things like, nowadays young people have to have a laptop to go to college. And some young people don't have the wherewithal. So we're willing to step in and do that, but we really want them to, do the Pell applications and exhaust. We also have scholarship opportunities. Our nonprofit provider community, Key being one example, the Key program, they offer scholarships, and these young people are eligible for a range of scholarships that, are really local in nature, but some of those one-off scholarships add up. And then at the end of the day, we step in and try to leverage that, and we see this transition from the high school diploma and GED into the community college system as a critical long-term developmental, kind of positive youth development piece that we're really trying to leverage. It's an important piece. So we have done a fair amount of that.
Thanks, Peter, for that clarification. Okay, there are a couple of more questions that I think we have time to get to. One from a participant is, will these services be available to detained youth placed in detention facilities or just offered to youth committed to DYS?
So we do offer our services to the youth who are in detention programs. And it depends on how long the youth will be in the program. If we are relatively certain that a young person will be in a detention program for the duration of a semester, that young person and DYS central office leadership and the program, clinical director, program director, et cetera, are in support, then we do let students enroll in post-secondary education. And just like with the committed youth, if a detained youth has a high school credential or is interested in dual enrollment at a school that has early Pell, which 2 of our partners do, by the way, then that young person will be expected to complete FAFSA, and if they are Pell eligible, use the Pell Grant to pay for those courses. We currently have 2 detained youth that may possibly earn an associate's degree while they're with us because they will be with us for that long.
And this is Woody. I will add that in addition to participation in formalized courses, college classes, all students participate in the college planning, college and career planning course called our Empower Your Future course. And even if they're with us for a short period of time, they will get exposed to a curriculum that sends the signal of college planning and career planning as being an essential part of your academic career. So while they may not be able to enroll in, matriculate into classes, and complete a college class in a 12-day stay in a detention facility, they will have the opportunity to gain some awareness about college and career options through EYF.
Woody, let me ask you, that Empower Your Future curriculum, is that someplace online that viewers, participants might be able to take a look at, or is it something that people could request from you or from Wendy?
Absolutely. We're in the period of revisioning the guide itself, but we do have quite a bit of materials that are available, and we'll be glad to share it maybe as a follow-up through an email following this webinar. Can we do it that way?
I'm pretty sure we can ask Jonah and Darlene, but potentially your 3 handouts that you felt as though would be important for participants, and maybe this curriculum could be something that could be sent out or to the participants, or actually placed online when the webinar is archived. Jonah or Darlene, could you do that?
Yeah, this is Jonah just jumping in here really quickly. We can absolutely, if you send us over a couple links, get them sent out with links to the PowerPoint and the video recording. So those will go out after the webinar.
There's effectively 1 minute left and 1 question, so that works out pretty well. What sort of safeguards need to be put in place in order to ensure that the credits earned while the youngsters are incarcerated transfer from, say, one community college to another, maybe in another community, or a 4-year university?
That's a great question. So in Massachusetts, the Department of Higher Education has the state schools have articulated agreements, and they call it the mass transfer block. So essentially, any course that a student takes at one state school, whether it's a community college or a 4-year college, transfers at face value to any other state school. education and career counselors are trained to work with students to enroll in courses that are in the mass transfer block. And if they are not, to review, for example, Urban College of Boston, they are trained to review the course requirements for the concentration that the young person is choosing or degree program, and compare it to the requirements for the degree program that the student may transfer to in the community in another region, and do their best to ensure that those classes are transferable at face value. So
Okay.
state school is a given in Massachusetts.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Appreciate that. And I'll turn things back over to Peter, who will tie the knot on this webinar and tell us what's coming next.
Sure. Simone, thank you very much for your participation. I think people that are on the webinar appreciate the fact that we have a talented team up here in Massachusetts on the education and workforce front. So I want to thank the presenters very much. Our next call is September 10th, which is the second Monday because of Labor Day. It's going to be focused on measurement and outcomes, and it's going to be spearheaded by Phil Harris and Jeff Butts from John Jay College. And I think that this is the Positive Youth Outcomes Committee, and we're going to be focusing on measurement and outcomes. I hope you can join us. We have we're contemplating additional webinars, so stay tuned. Good afternoon.